A folded drawing left on an old porch swing. A child's quiet hope, unnoticed, until the wrong man found it. Elena Marsh thought she was just passing through. A job on a farm, a roof over her head, a chance to breathe after too many years of running. She never expected the man behind that weathered fence to be more than a gruff recluse. She didn't know he carried a past heavier than hers. And he didn't expect her. Not her laughter, not her fire, and certainly not her little boy, who left behind a picture of a family that didn't exist. Yet, before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. The first thing Elena noticed about the farm was the silence. Not the peaceful kind that wrapped around your shoulders like a blanket, but the hollow, waiting kind. The kind that watched. She stepped out of the borrowed pickup truck and glanced at the long dirt drive stretching behind them. Toby kicked his feet against the bench seat and hugged his worn blue backpack to his chest. "Is this it?" he asked, his voice small. "This is it," she replied, brushing sweaty bangs off her forehead. Maple Hollow was a dot on the map, a whisper of a town tucked between low hills and long-forgotten fields. She'd never heard of it before last week, when her mother's old friend, Bonnie Rudd, called out of the blue. "There's a man needs help on his land," she'd said. "Keeps to himself. Lost a lot. Pays cash." Elena didn't ask what lost a lot meant. She needed a job. She needed a roof. She needed to stop making Toby change schools every few months because she couldn't hold down a second shift in the city while paying rent and keeping him fed. So here they were, facing a white farmhouse with peeling paint, a sagging front porch, and 100 unspoken questions. The door opened. He didn't step out, just stood there filling the frame. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark flannel shirt rolled up at the forearms. A man carved more from silence than anything else. "You're early," he said. "We can wait, if that's a problem," Elena answered, chin lifted just slightly. He looked at her for a moment, not at the suitcase by her feet or the child clinging to her side, but directly at her, as if trying to place her in a story he didn't want to read. "No," he said. "You're here. Let's get on with it." He turned and walked back inside. Toby looked up at her, one brow raised. Elena smirked. "Well," she muttered, "he's a bundle of sunshine." They followed. Inside, the house smelled like cedar and dust. Clean, but untouched, like someone lived here by accident. The furniture was heavy, old. A coat rack stood by the door but held nothing. The walls were bare except for a faded photograph above the fireplace. Two boys and a man, all grinning. One of the boys looked like the man who just walked past her. "You'll have the attic room," he said without turning around. "Boy can take the one next to it. Meals are on your own time. You'll help with animals, fence work, deliveries. It's not glamorous." "I'm not looking for glamour." He stopped in the hallway and faced her again. "Good, because there's none here." That was her introduction to Caleb Wyatt. She didn't know then that locals whispered about him. That 5 years ago he was in the newspapers, real estate golden boy, genius investor, untouchable bachelor. Then his brother died. The company collapsed. He vanished. Some people said it was guilt. Others said it was grief. She didn't know any of that. All she knew was that her son needed stability, and she needed a paycheck. Later that evening, after they'd unpacked the bare minimum, clothes, school notebooks, a half-full box of crayons, Elena stood on the porch and looked out at the fields. They rolled in waves, gold and green, stretching farther than she could see. Toby was inside drawing. Caleb was somewhere in the barn, hammering something that didn't want to be fixed. She let the breeze push strands of hair across her cheek and exhaled. It wasn't much, but maybe, just maybe, it could be enough. Inside, Toby carefully slid a folded paper under the porch swing cushion. He'd drawn 3 stick figures holding hands. A man with a hat, a woman with curly hair, and a little boy in the middle. He didn't say anything to his mom. He just hoped someone would find it. The morning began with the rooster. Not a gentle country crow, but a shrill, stubborn scream of a bird who clearly hated everyone equally. Elena groaned into her pillow. She wasn't used to waking up to animals, only to sirens, neighbors arguing, or the buzz of the city bleeding through thin walls. She sat up, rubbed her eyes, and listened to the stillness beyond the creaking attic walls. Then came soft feet on the floorboards. Toby's whisper through the door. "Mom, I'm up," she called back. "Can I feed the goats?" That was how their new routine began. Not with instructions, but with curiosity. Toby had never seen goats in real life before yesterday. Now he was obsessed. By the time she made it downstairs, Caleb was already in the kitchen, pouring black coffee into a dented mug. He didn't say good morning, just nodded once. "You have a schedule?" she asked, pulling her hair into a ponytail. "I have work. You follow it or not, up to you. You're just a joy to be around, aren't you?" she muttered, brushing past him. But he heard. His lips twitched almost like a smirk. Almost. Outside, the fields looked different in daylight, less mysterious, more demanding. Fences leaned where they shouldn't. The barn roof was half-patched. Everything needed something. But the air was clean and the quiet was peaceful, the kind that Elena had never truly known. Toby ran ahead to the pen. The goats bleated in unison, their strange little faces pressing against the wire fence like a choir of weird, hungry puppies. Caleb worked in silence. Elena followed his lead. He showed her how to muck out stalls, feed the chickens, how to avoid getting headbutted by the billy goat with a grudge. They didn't talk much. But by the end of the first week, she knew how he took his coffee, what kind of screws he preferred, and that he always paused before stepping into the barn, like it held something only he could see. She found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. He wasn't handsome in the polished way. He was worn in, like the land, rugged, weathered, real. And something about that steadiness made her chest ache in a way she didn't understand. Toby took to farm life like he'd been born for it. Every afternoon after helping Elena with chores, he'd run to the pasture with a notebook under his arm, drawing animals, clouds, sometimes spaceships flying over the barn. One day, Elena found a new drawing on her pillow. This time, it was just 2 figures. One small, one tall. Above them, in big block letters, he'd written, "Me and Mr. Caleb." She smiled, then frowned, because she wasn't sure what that meant. And she wasn't sure she liked how much she wondered. Late one evening, after Toby fell asleep reading a library book about stars, Elena stepped outside for air. The porch swing creaked under her weight. The breeze carried the scent of hay, wood smoke, and something faintly sweet, apples, maybe. She hadn't heard Caleb approach. "Your kid's sharp," he said, leaning against the railing. She looked up, startled. "He is. He'll get bored here." "He hasn't yet." Caleb crossed his arms. "Kids like him don't stay in places like this." Elena narrowed her eyes. "What kind of place is this?" He didn't answer. She let silence stretch between them until it frayed at the edges. "You always this charming, or just with your employees?" "Didn't hire you for charm." "No," she said quietly. "You hired me because I was desperate." That made him look at her. There was no pity in his face, just something raw. Familiar. He looked like a man who knew desperation well. "I hired you," he said finally, "because I needed help. And you showed up." The moon rose behind him, casting his face in shadow. She wondered what he saw when he looked at her. A single mom with dirt on her jeans and bags under her eyes? Or someone who hadn't given up? Then he said something she didn't expect. "My brother liked to draw." The air changed. She turned slowly. "You had a brother?" "Had." He nodded once, as far away. He was the better one. Smarter. Softer. Didn't belong in boardrooms? You were in boardrooms? Another pause. You don't Google the people you work for? I don't have time. And I didn't want to know. Figured it was none of my business. He looked at her then, not with suspicion, but something closer to relief. Good, he said. And just like that, he walked away. She sat on the porch long after he was gone. The quiet felt different this time. Not hollow. Just waiting. The rain came on a Tuesday. Not a storm, just a steady, soaking gray that turned the paths to mud and slowed everything to a crawl. Toby stayed inside most of the day, stretched out on the rug with colored pencils and a pile of books. Elena scrubbed out the kitchen cabinets, if only to feel useful. Caleb disappeared somewhere on the property. He did that sometimes, vanished into sheds or fields like the land itself had swallowed him whole. She let him. She wasn't sure what they were, the two of them, boss and worker? Acquaintance and accidental confidant? Something else? She didn't want to name it. Not yet. Naming things made them fragile. That afternoon, Elena took a trip into town. They needed groceries and she needed fresh air. Maple Hollow was small, 2 gas stations, a diner, a post office, a hardware store. Everyone knew everyone. Or, more accurately, everyone talked about everyone. She hadn't been in the general store 5 minutes before she heard the whispers. Did you see her get out of that truck? That's Wyatt's place, isn't it? Thought he didn't take to people. She's got a kid too. Wonder if he's the reason. She kept her head down, focused on the shopping list in her hand. But then, at the register, the clerk, a woman about her age with long painted nails and an overly bright smile, leaned forward and said, "You know who he is, right?" Elena blinked. "Excuse me. Caleb Wyatt. He used to be big. Chicago big. Real estate, investments, private jets." Then she snapped her fingers. "Gone. I don't really." "He's in a documentary," the woman continued, almost gleeful. "The one about failed moguls. Episode 4. Brother died, company crashed, blah blah. Honestly, I always thought he looked familiar." Elena stood frozen, groceries halfway into a paper bag. The woman kept talking, but it faded. Her heart pounded. Her hands were cold. She didn't know what she felt. Betrayed? No, he hadn't lied. Not really. But still. He hadn't told her. And now she felt like a fool. She drove back in silence. Toby chatted in the back seat, humming softly to himself, completely unaware. When they pulled into the gravel drive, Caleb was on the porch, hammering a loose board. He looked up. She didn't wave. Inside, she set the groceries down harder than necessary. He stepped into the kitchen a minute later, wiping his hands on a rag. "Everything okay?" "Funny question," she said, not facing him. He paused. "Something happened in town?" "I don't know, Caleb. Want to tell me what episode 4 means?" The air snapped. His jaw tightened. "So now you know. You didn't think maybe I should?" "I didn't think it mattered." "You didn't think it mattered?" She turned, eyes blazing. "You were a public figure, hell, a rich public figure, and now you're hiding out like a ghost, and you didn't think it mattered to tell the person raising her kid under your roof?" "I didn't ask you to raise your kid here," he said, voice low. "You needed work. I gave you work." "No. You gave me silence. Rules. Half answers. And I put up with it because I thought maybe, just maybe, there was something human left in you." He stepped back. Just slightly. Elena's voice cracked. "I'm not here to be your charity case, Caleb." "You're not. Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I'm broken." The room pulsed with quiet. Not angry, not accusatory, just broken in its own way. "I don't think you're broken," she said after a beat. "I think you're scared. Of what people see. Of what you see in yourself." He didn't answer. She walked past him, grabbed her keys, and called for Toby. He came running, confused. She didn't explain. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay tonight. They stayed in a roadside motel. The kind with buzzing neon, scratchy towels, and windows that didn't quite close. Toby didn't complain. He colored quietly while she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her phone, not calling anyone. She didn't have anyone to call. Not really. The next morning, there was a note under the windshield wiper of her truck. Folded clean. Her name in block letters. Elena. I didn't lie. But I didn't tell you everything, and I should have. If you want to come back, the porch light will be on. If not, I'll understand. Caleb. She read it twice. Then a third time. She didn't cry. But she didn't throw it away either. She didn't go back right away. 3 days passed. She dropped Toby off at the school in town and parked at the edge of the hill where she could see the farm from a distance, its roof like a forgotten sentence, its fences holding in more than just livestock. She told herself she was just making sure he was still alive, that the animals hadn't starved, that the man she'd almost started to trust hadn't collapsed without anyone noticing. But the truth sat in her chest like a stone. She missed the place, and that scared her more than anything. On the 4th day, she drove into town and nearly collided with a tractor outside the old church. A group of locals were setting up wooden tables under a banner that read Maple Hollow Harvest Market, Saturday. It looked cheerful. Homemade pies, hand-carved signs, jugs of cider. And in the middle of it all, Caleb Wyatt, wearing jeans smudged with dirt, carrying crates of apples, nodding politely to people who had once crossed the street to avoid him. He was working, helping, talking. She pulled over and watched as he handed a stack of flyers to the school principal and then helped an elderly man carry boxes to a pickup truck. He didn't smile, not exactly, but there was something softer in his shoulders. Something different. Elena drove away before he could see her. That night, back at the motel, she sat with Toby while he did his math homework and asked, casually, would you want to go back to the farm? He looked up, blinking. Are you mad at Mr. Caleb? She hesitated. Not anymore. I miss the goats, he said, then added quietly, and him. So did she. They returned on a Friday afternoon. The sun was low and gold across the pasture. The porch light was on. Caleb stood at the top step as if he'd been waiting, not with hope, just readiness. Elena opened the truck door and stepped out slowly. Toby ran past her and up the steps, arms flung wide. Caleb knelt and caught him without hesitation. Hey, astronaut, he murmured. Elena stayed back, her arms crossed. He looked up, unsure. I saw you at the harvest market, she said. Didn't know you were the type. I wasn't. Until now. They stood in silence, then he spoke again, quiet, deliberate. I wasn't trying to hide from you. I was trying to start over. But I don't know how to do that with people. Not really. She looked past him, toward the porch swing, where the cushion still bulged slightly with the old crayon drawing folded underneath. Then back at him. Starting over doesn't mean cutting yourself off, she said. It means letting people in, even if they see the cracks. His voice barely reached her. Are you coming back? She didn't answer. She just climbed the steps, placed a small canvas tote on the porch beside him, and said, laundry. You're behind. He almost smiled. The harvest market the next day was simple but full of life. Kids chased each other with caramel apples. Elders gossiped in lawn chairs. There was a raffle, a hayride, a band playing off-key bluegrass, and pies that sold out in an hour. Elena walked the rows in a borrowed sundress. She hadn't worn one in years. Caleb was posted near the apple crates, managing payments for donated baskets, chatting more than she'd ever seen. People didn't just tolerate him, they included him. They teased him, thanked him. She passed by slowly, letting her fingers graze the wooden table, and he looked up. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Not surprise, not fear, warmth. Later that evening, after everything had been packed up, and Toby had fallen asleep in the truck bed surrounded by cider and hay, Elena sat on the back steps of the farmhouse and watched the stars come out. Caleb joined her with 2 mugs of tea, sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder, but didn't speak for a long time. Then, you were right. I don't let people in. She didn't respond. But I want to. She sipped the tea, eyes on the sky. It's not a door you open once. It's something you leave cracked and hope no one slams shut. He set his mug down. I'd like to try. With you. With him. She turned, finally, and studied his face in the starlight. The tired corners. The long quiet pain. The hope, too, still new, still fragile. I'm not looking for a rescue, she said. Good, he replied. I'm not offering one. I don't need saving. No, he said. But maybe we could save each other a little, just by being here. She looked down at her hands, then up at him. You're not the man I thought you were. He nodded slowly. Neither are you. And somehow that was enough. The first frost came 2 weeks later. Mornings turned sharp, and breath rose like smoke as Caleb carried feed buckets and Elena pulled Toby's knit hat low over his ears. The farmhouse smelled like cinnamon and wood polish. Life was slower now, but fuller, more rooted. Toby started bringing home drawings from school. Not just dinosaurs and rockets, but farms and families. One of them showed a big house, 3 stick figures, and a dog. They didn't have a dog. Yet, one morning, Elena found Caleb sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through an old leather-bound folder. She paused in the doorway, watching. You okay? She asked gently. He looked up. I've been thinking about restarting the land trust project. She blinked. The one from before? He nodded. Different scale, different goal. Small grants for young farmers. Help with equipment, resources. Community-based. And you want to run that from here? If I'm not afraid anymore, he said, then looked at her. And if I'm not doing it alone? She set down the dish towel. You're not. Later that week, a town official asked if Caleb would speak at the monthly council meeting. He agreed. It was just 15 people in a church basement, but when he stood in front of them, people leaned in. They listened. He spoke plainly. About the land. About second chances. About the kind of future you grow, not the kind you buy. Elena watched from the back, her arms crossed, but her heart open. After the meeting, one of the older farmers clapped Caleb on the back and said, Didn't think you had it in you, son. I didn't, Caleb replied, glancing toward her. But someone helped me remember. On a quiet Sunday, as leaves turned copper and gold, Elena stood on the back porch sipping tea while Toby ran in circles around the yard, pretending to be a space goat. I don't know what that is, she muttered, amused. His imagination's untamed, Caleb said, appearing beside her. I like it. She tilted her head. You're smiling more lately. Am I? You even laughed last night. I did not. You did. It was faint, but real. He leaned on the railing. You know, when I first came here, I thought this place would bury me. Thought if I worked hard enough, long enough, I could forget who I used to be. And now, he looked out over the pasture. Now I think maybe I'm not supposed to forget. Maybe I'm supposed to grow into something else. She turned toward him. That's what healing is. It's not erasing. It's becoming. He didn't say anything, just looked at her, eyes soft. Then, I was thinking about building a new room. On the east side. She raised a brow. For what? Don't know yet. Maybe a dog room. Maybe a music room. Maybe a... He cleared his throat. Maybe something else. For whoever stays. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, I think it should have a skylight. He blinked. Yeah. For the boy who dreams about stars. Caleb smiled. That night, she sat by Toby's bed while he drifted to sleep. He murmured something into his pillow. "What was that?" she whispered, brushing his hair back. "Is Mr. Caleb my almost dad?" She laughed softly. "What do you think?" "I think if he builds that room, we should help paint it." "Deal," she whispered, kissing his forehead. The next morning, she stepped out onto the porch and found a small box wrapped in paper and twine. No note, no fanfare. Inside was a silver key. Not to the house. She already had one. It was labeled East Room. She stood there a long time, holding it in her palm, sunlight glinting off the metal. No promises. No speeches. Just space. And the quiet offering of something that might become home. Thank you for joining this journey. If it made you feel something, warmth, hope, peace, let it stay with you. And remember, sometimes love doesn't arrive all at once. Sometimes it grows in silence between fences and folded drawings. Before you go, don't forget to comment below where you're watching from. And if you haven't yet, subscribe for more stories just like this one. See you in the next one.